On your Friday episode of Locked On Raptors, Darko Rajaković gets a much-earned contract extension, and now he gets to cook.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors. It is Friday, July the 3rd, and I'm your host, your pal, Sean Woodley. Thanks for hanging as always. And today's show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. The biggest stage in world soccer is here. Let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started now. We will get started here in your Friday episode of the show as we're continuing to talk about the thing we've been talking about all week long. And I'm so thankful I've had this to talk about all week as I've been stuck inside as it's 5,000 degrees outdoors. And it's been nice cooped up talking about Kawhi freaking Leonard. And we're going to keep talking about Kawhi freaking Leonard and how excited we are to watch him play for this basketball team. We're going to do it with our pal Joe Wolfond, who is here. Wolf, just 8 days ago, we at the very end of the podcast talked about the sort of rumor milling of, could perhaps there be some sort of Kawhi Leonard move in the works? The Raptors, the Spurs, and here we are. He's on the team. That happened fast.
It did. That's the way this league moves, man. It's like one day you're talking about a rumor that seems barely like the flicker of an ember of a rumor, and a couple days later it's a done deal. Yeah. And the Raptors have Kawhi Leonard again. Seems like they're going to have him for the next 3 seasons. Seems like he maybe wants to end his career in Toronto. It just is wild what a different world we're living in than the one we were living in 1 week ago. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, this world is still what it is. But in Raptors world, at least, things are looking very, very sunny. At least from where I'm sitting. So
yeah, the sports figure to offer a really lovely distraction for us Raptors fans this year from all Correct. Of the horrors. Yeah, also, the world has changed since yesterday, too, because Kyle Anderson's on the Raptors now, which is very exciting for us little sickos who like slow-mo. We'll probably talk about him at some point later in the show. We're going to get into the things that we're excited to watch with this team, how it's going to play, and all of that. But we should start. There was some big news yesterday for the Raptors. Expected news, but still worth remarking upon. Darko Rajaković gets extended for multiple years, terms not disclosed, team policies, yada, yada, yada. He's, I think, very deserving of this extension. I think the way he guided the team through a couple of hell seasons and then totally flipped the switch last year and turned them into a 46-win team with a top 5 to 7 defense, depending on where you look, and an offense that found respectability for the first time in Toronto in years. Just a wonderful job all around. Thought he did a really good job in the playoff series as well as the Raptors took the Cavs to 7. Quick thoughts here on the Darko extension. Nothing surprising here. It just seems like everyone agrees. Yeah, he's a good coach. This is well earned, and now he gets to go coach a real ass team.
Yeah, I mean, I thought he did a fantastic job last season, and this past season really was the proving ground for him, right? And we talked about it a bunch going into that year. His first couple years, it's like insane amounts of roster turnover. The team's not necessarily even trying to win games. And the priorities are just completely different than they were last season when it was time to flip the page. It was time to start winning, time to get serious. And I think even from the beginning, we did get a pretty clear sense of what his offensive philosophy was going to be, how he wanted the team to play. Yep. We got glimmers of what his defensive philosophy was going to be as well. But again, just because of the extent of the roster turnover, I don't think we fully got to see that vision articulated. And I remember him actually saying this. I was at his end of season press conference after his first season, and he copped to that. He's like, I feel like when there is so much change on the roster, it's a lot easier when you're cycling through a lot of different guys and a lot of different types of lineups to impose an offensive organizing philosophy than defensive. Like defense requires so much more understanding of scheme and communication, and so without that stability, he didn't feel like he could really implement it. And so I do think there were questions going into this year about like what that was going to look like when the games became meaningful. And I think everything, for the most part, that we saw was positive. Like, obviously not perfect, but for a coach who, as a head coach, was really getting his first opportunity to coach in games that matter, to coach in the playoffs, I came away very impressed. And look, we can put some numbers on it. The Raptors were a top 10 half-court offense in the league this year.
Crazy.
Nobody would have expected that coming into the season. And to have done it the way that he did with the lack of shooting on the team, with the lack of ball handling on the team. I mean, it's really quite extraordinary that he was able to coax that out of this team, just honestly by virtue of passing, cutting, and just like playing hard, frankly. Like, he got buy-in really at both ends.
Don't forget friendship. Friendship's part of it.
I suppose, if you want to throw that in there. But I mean, that does matter, right? Like, the interpersonal stuff does matter, because that is a big part of the reason they hired him in the first place, to be a really intentional swerve from the Nick Nurse era. And every player speaks glowingly about Darko. And that matters too. But I think we knew that, and what we didn't necessarily know for sure was what his tactical acumen was going to be, or how he was going to be able to impose that on the Raptors stylistically. And you mentioned it, right? Like, top 5 defense by some metrics this past season. Huge amount of credit for that obviously goes to Scottie Barnes and Collin Murray-Boyles. But man, I mean, to do that with a starting lineup that really just had the one clear positive defender is insane. Yeah. And I think especially, they weren't as good defensively in that first round series against the Cavs, but they're going up against a very good offensive team, for one thing. And for another thing, I just thought process-wise, the adjustments he was able to make, and just like tactically, the ingenuity, the creativity, the things that he came up with in order to junk things up and kind of grind that offense down, really impressed me. And so I'm exceptionally excited to see what he can do now that you have that elite talent in the door and a different kind of offensive player than he's ever coached with this team. So yeah, I think it was a very well-deserved extension, and he earned it. And look, last year things got a little bit more serious. This year things are going to get a lot more serious. The stakes have been raised considerably. I think he's up for it.
Yeah, totally agreed. I think he did everything this season, Joe, that you could have hoped for from a coach, from the adaptability in terms of altering how the team played, particularly defensively. They started the season just playing so overly aggressive, getting roasted, and he dialed it back and then kind of dialed it back up at times when it was necessary, the playoffs in particular, and kind of kept that tool in the bag. I think he has a great handle of how to manage 82 games and kind of ride the ups and downs and sort of use his roster to its full extent to get through those 82 games. I think, again, the tactical stuff in the playoffs was super encouraging. The interpersonal stuff we know is very strong from everything you hear. Just like a really, really impressive job. Well done. And yeah, to your point, now he gets to coach Kawhi Leonard, which is very, very exciting. And I am really curious to see how Kawhi fits into Darko Ball. Last year we saw with Brandon Ingram, they kind of met Ingram closer to where he was than he met them in the middle or anything like that. Like, he made some concessions, but certainly not all of the concessions you would have hoped to have seen from Ingram in his first season with the Raptors. And Kawhi is so good that I think you're more eager to make those concessions and live with it because he's just that good. And, his play style will certainly demand some of those. But I also think he stands a chance of meeting the Raptors in the middle a little bit more than Ingram did, just because of the style of his play, the sort of swiftness of his decision making, obviously just like the shooting he brings to the table and all of that. Like, I think it's going to be a little bit of a better marriage between sort of preferred play style and star player. Not to say I think that, Kawhi is just going to become full on a system guy or anything like that. Like, he's going to operate outside of it at times. We saw that in 2018-19, where there was the Kawhi offense and there was the Kyle Lowry having fun with his friends offense, and they kind of coexisted and, these sort of separate tracks. We'll see how it all works, but I do think the sort of fit into the play style for Kawhi is going to be a lot more seamless than it was with Ingram. What do you think?
I mean, I think so, but I really just think that comes down to Kawhi being better than Ingram at almost everything.
Yeah.
So, and I think, specifically with the pace of play, I do think he's a better and more willing sort of transition and early offense player than Ingram is or was. But in terms of, to the extent that Kawhi is a better decision maker than Ingram, I really just think that's about the fact that the decisions he makes have a better chance of leading to buckets because he's a better shot maker, overall better scorer. And it's not like, playmaking, I don't think Kawhi is really any better than Brandon was. You just feel better about him calling his own number, essentially.
Enough, yeah.
And so I think, what you were saying off the jump, to me, reads as more likely, where it's just like they make concessions to Kawhi more so than Kawhi makes concessions to them. And I think that's fine. And we even talked about this with Ingram, where it's like, yeah, you want to see some adaptation from him. And we also talked about how there was a lot of adaptation that didn't happen, that we were hoping to see happen. But you also just had to let him be himself to a certain extent. And I think the same thing with Kawhi. And this is top of mind because I just wrote about it, but I sort of feel like for Darko, last season was almost like a crash course in adapting his offensive system to accommodate this type of slower paced, ISO heavy type of scorer. And now he's just going to get to do it with a guy who has a much better chance of like rewarding his trust in a more meaningful way. So that's sort of how I feel about the offensive fit. And then, defensively, I wanted to hit on a point that you made about how they started the season with this hyper-aggressive style, and then they kind of scaled it back and scaled it back up. Like, I do think they got a little more intentional about who was applying pressure, who was picking up in the backcourt, who was bringing blind double teams and things like that. But actually, what I came away feeling was that at the end of the day, Darko, and the coaching staff as a whole, more or less stuck to their guns.
Sure.
And you had dummies like me coming out and being like, this system doesn't make sense with the personnel that you have. You got to dial it back. It's too much pressure. And again, they did, fiddle with some of the knobs and dial it back a bit in some spots. But for the most part, they really just put it on the players to execute the scheme better. And the players did. And so I appreciate the fact, both the adaptability that you mentioned, but also the fact that this coaching staff, led by Darko, has these ideas about how they want to play and are willing to stick with them, even if the result isn't always perfect. And I think the way that Kawhi fits perfectly into this, right? Because he is an unbelievable defensive playmaker. He may not be the one-on-one stopper that he used to be, but he is still a demon in passing lanes, and also just a guy who can one-on-one rip his own guy and is going to come up with a ton of steals. And again, I mentioned this in the piece that I wrote, but like a big part of the Raptors' success last year is they had a huge turnover differential.
Yep.
They barely turned the ball over, and they turned their opponents over a ton. Only the Thunder had a bigger turnover differential. Kawhi is like a walking turnover differential. He is the only active player in the NBA, and one of, if his career ended tomorrow, one of only 2 players in NBA history who has more steals than turnovers in his career.
Insane.
And they were getting 0 defensive playmaking almost from Ingram and Barrett last year, basically, right? Like that was a huge missing ingredient from their defense, was defensive playmaking on the wing. And now they have one of the best guys in the league at doing it.
Yeah, and Ingram on offense was prone to the sort of big, loud turnover games too, right? And so, I just think across the board, I'm just very, very keen to watch Darko get to fiddle with everything with this dude kind of leading the snake on offense in particular. And then defensively, I think like Scottie's still going to be the anchor of it all. Scottie's still going to tie the whole thing together. Collin Murray-Boyles, obviously, I expect very big things from. Kawhi is not the guy he was even in 2019 when he was like the 3rd best defensive player on that team at best. It's still, though, a big step up over Ingram on the defensive end. And just the amount of toys that Darko gets to play with now is pretty exciting. And we're going to get into what is exciting us when we think about how Darko is going to put all these pieces into place coming up in just 1 second. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. The biggest stage in world soccer is here, and every match feels like it has the potential for a memorable moment. One goal could completely change the energy of a game, shift momentum, and alter the outcome in an instant. That is what makes tournament soccer so exciting, from the opening whistle to the final kick. Now FanDuel is giving fans another reason to stay locked into every match. With every goal pays, bet on a match and get bonus bets for every goal scored in that match. More goals means more bonus bets. All you got to do is turn on your token and get the benefit from each goal scored in these games. So there's a team that I've been just loath to watch in this World Cup that has a knockout game on Friday. And I'm just telling you, don't put money on this game as the one that's going to have a lot of goals. Ghana has done a good job to get through the group stage, but man, are they a drag. They just park the bus and try to scrape out one goal at some point, and if not, they're content to go 0-0 into extra time, penalties, whatever it's going to be. And so as they play Colombia, who's been very electric and fun, I'm just not betting on a lot of goals in that game. So pick the Argentina-Cabo Verde game instead if you're going to go and try to get as many goals as possible. Messi likes to score them goals. From the opening whistle to the final kick, let there be goals on FanDuel. Visit FanDuel.com to get started now. Back at it here with Wolf, talking about Darko and how much fun he's going to have with Kawhi Leonard-led Toronto Raptors. Man, oh man. So what's, like, just thinking about the construction of this team, how it's going to play, how the pieces are going to fit together, Joe, is there a thing that stands out as like the thing you're most excited to watch, whether it's a specific, end of the floor, specific lineup, or sort of scheme you're hoping they can run on one end or the other? Just open canvas here, what you got as far as the thing that's really, really getting you just giddy to watch this team on the floor?
It's actually something we talked about briefly on our last episode when we were just scraping the surface of this Kawhi Leonard possibility that at the time, again, was just like the flicker of an idea. But it's the idea of this like wing/forward quartet of Kawhi, Scottie, RJ, and CMB.
Yeah.
Where it's just like brawn everywhere. Just so much strength and physicality, so much second side scoring punch, right? Like if the ball gets swung to that side and Scottie is catching it and RJ is catching it, like even Collin, who can catch the ball with a little bit of an advantage, maybe not from out on the 3-point line, but like from 18 feet and in, and can just like be on top of the rim. And also, like, I'm just thinking about it, and that foursome, like we've talked about RJ's defensive struggles, but he does have some defensive skills in terms of like what he can do one-on-one, especially against other like big forwards, because of how strong he is. And it's really like the sort of team defense, the off-ball defense with him that's been an issue, but one-on-one he's pretty solid. And so when I think about other teams trying to match up with that, I'm thinking like, which team has the personnel to match up with those four guys and how strong they all are, and how, at least for like Kawhi and Scottie, the way that they can attack mismatches. Who has the personnel to match up with those guys at the defensive end of the floor, and then at the offensive end to like scrape out points with any regularity against them? It's just going to be a bear to play against. Like, they are not going to be fun to play. And I'm really excited to watch that sort of quartet play together. And then I think, you throw IQ into that mix and you have this movement shooter kind of buzzing around, coming off of screens, relocating on the weak side, setting inverted ball screens, like doing all that stuff that we know IQ is so good at, and having this extra, at least self-creator in Kawhi who can help mitigate some of IQ's limitations as an on-ball creator. I think that slots him into a more natural and I think better role for his skill set. And I think that's your closing five most nights. Yeah. Like I've said, I think like Yak is going to continue to start, but I think CMB is playing like 28 to 30 minutes off of the bench, and he's closing games, and that most of the time is your closing look, and I can't wait to watch that.
No, it's going to be a movie, man. And you mentioned the RJ getting to play with those other three dudes defensively. Like, you want to throw RJ on like the best wing or sort of lead creator for the other team and kind of hope he can hold the zone and have those three monsters in help behind. Like, that sounds pretty awesome to me. Like, there's just like, he's got so much coverage and insurance that he had on the team last year, I think. And I've had my issues with his defense, of course, over the years, but I think now he stands on this team to do so much offensively and benefit so much from Kawhi and Scottie and the off-ball gravity of IQ that I think he's going to like far, supersede any defensive, deficiencies he has with the efficiency I think he's going to tap into on offense. Like I've been just like, I think I threw this out on my sort of 12 takes about the trade that I put out as a bonus episode a couple days ago. I think he's going to like eclipse the efficiency he had post trade in 2024. Like, he's just going to have free reign to the rim so much more often than he had last year. And working off of Kawhi and Scottie, I think it's just going to be an absolute wonderland for him. And the defensive stuff, I'm just so much less worried about when he's going to be able to cook so much on offense. And I think he's going to come in handy too in those games where Kawhi sits, because certainly he's not going to play a full 82, one would assume. And I think we saw enough in the playoffs from him as sort of the secondary guy with Scottie to think, hey, he can help be one of those dudes who fills in those minutes without Kawhi as well. I think RJ stands to benefit a ton. I think IQ stands to benefit a ton. And frankly, I think when they had that starting lineup up there with Yak, like, I think we could see a better version of Yak, assuming he's healthy, than we saw last year as well. It turns out when you have an excellent player like Kawhi Leonard, the rising tide lifts all boats.
And Yak, dude, if he can have any kind of bounce back season, it would go such a long way. It would honestly come close to completing this team if he can be the Yak that we saw 2 years ago. It would be unbelievable. So yeah, we're hoping for that. And to your point about RJ, it's just like, you're thinking about what defenses are going to have to throw at Kawhi and Scottie.
Yeah.
I mean, RJ is just going to have favorable one-on-one matchups almost every night. And that's to say nothing about the way that he's going to get to attack tilted defenses because of the attention those other two guys can draw. And I'm very excited about the level of interior scoring that this team is going to be capable of. Because you're talking about, RJ shot 70% at the rim last year. Scottie, I think, was at 69%. CMB was like the number one rim scorer in the first round of the playoffs.
114% or something like that. Yeah.
and Scottie, I've thrown the stat out there a bunch, but like he led the playoffs in the first round in rim assists by a mile. He had 30 rim assists in 7 games in the first round. Jokic had 23 and he was in second. Like, this is going to be one of the best interior scoring teams in the league. And I know Kawhi at this stage doesn't get all the way to the rim a ton, but he gets into that short mid-range area so frequently, and he's near automatic from that spot. Like, again, the Raptors in the playoffs, number one paint scoring team in the first round. They bring in a guy who would have led their team in paint scoring last year were he a Raptor. So I just think those 4 guys especially are going to be super duper fun to watch.
Yeah, and like sprinkle in IQ, sprinkle in like Jacoby Walter if you want to go a little bigger. You can maybe swap Walter in for RJ with IQ and just go like peak shooting with like Scottie running point, Kawhi, Walter, IQ just flying around and shooting threes, and CMB.
Or how about like Shed and Jacoby playing with Scottie, Kawhi, and CMB? Like, does anybody score on that lineup?
No, they don't.
I mean, like that, honestly, like they had their lineups, even just with Jacoby and Shed on the floor together last year, were turning opponents over like 20% of the time.
Yeah.
So a lineup with those two guys and Kawhi and Scottie and CMB, I mean, could it be 25%? Could it be 30%? Like, I think it's not out of the question that the Raptors lead the league in steals this year. In fact, it may even be likely.
Yeah, I think that's totally on the table. Like it's like, what if the Thunder, but everyone's 6'8"? It's except for Shed, who plays 6'8". That's he's at the heart of a lion over than that guy. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the Kawhi like lack of rim pressure thing, because I think if you're like a skeptic of the trade, you could point to, he doesn't even get to the rim anymore. He's just like a jump shot merchant. Okay, he's like the best jump shot guy there is, so that's great. First of all, and I think his shooting is just so lethal and has gotten to the point. I mean, the pull-up, what was it? I saw someone share the stat that he had averaged 4 pull-ups on his own this past season with the Clippers, and the Raptors as a team averaged 4.5. Like, I'm all right if you want a little bit more of a perimeter-oriented guy to fit around a team that has been kind of only living at the rim over the last handful of years. I think it's a great addition to what they've got going, and it's not as though he can't get to the rim. When he does get to the rim, he finishes automatically too. It's I think it's going to be a really nice balance. And I think for Kawhi, like, he doesn't have to do everything. And I think that's going to go into helping to preserve his health and keeping him fresh and keeping him from having to carry this massive burden. And it's going to work for Scottie the same way, right? Like, he's not going to have to carry the burden he did in the playoffs. I think that would have been unsustainable over 82 games, as much as it was super fun to watch him go off and, roast the Cavs the way he did. Now he gets to, find some balance too. I just think when Kawhi is on the floor, it's going to be such a load to deal with for other teams. And I don't think there are any teams that are going to be able to like replicate the way they play either. And that is always an advantage, right? Like, if you can zig while everyone else is zagging and leave teams without the proper wherewithal to handle you, like, you're doing something right. We'll come back, Joe. We'll pick this up, get into the sort of the styles this team might be able to play. Are they a stylistically diverse team? Does it matter if they just kind of have one mode, because it's just such an elite mode to go to? And we'll also get into whether we have any concerns or reservations about how this is all going to come together. We'll do that coming up in just a sec. Wrapping things up here as Joe and I just daydream about the Toronto Raptors basketball. I am very, very ready for the season to start, Joe. So on the stylistic tip, like we've kind of talked about those 4 guys in particular: RJ, Scottie, CMB, Kawhi. How the other guys might fit in around their orbit. Obviously, Jakob Poeltl brings the sort of traditional big man element, but I think if there was maybe sort of one reservation you might have, it's like, okay, this team might not have like a ton of ways to go and play. Like, they're not going to have like double big lineups they can toss out there the way has been on vogue with some teams out there around the league. They don't have a spacing big. Losing Mamu certainly cuts into their overall shooting. Like, they might kind of have to be a team that plays one way very, very well with some iterations and variations in that style, but like, it's going to be more or less the same across most of their lineups. Does that concern you? Do you agree with that? Or do you think this is a team that might have a little more stylistic diversity to kind of tap into to sort of mold what they're doing to different opponents?
Well, to your point about, playing double big lineups and just throwing like very different looks at teams, I think it's fair to say that they don't have a lot of diversity in that sense. Like, a lot of their configurations are going to look similar. And offensively, that's where I think they could run into challenges in terms of the different types of things that maybe they're going to be able to do.
Sure.
And this isn't going to be all that different from last year. The issue that teams run into when they have a lot of like-sized guys is, what types of actions do you want to run with guys who are all, basically in the same size range and are theoretically going to be defended by guys who are also around that range? And like, how do you run pick and rolls with 2 of those guys without it just being an auto switch that doesn't get you an advantage? So I think, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because to my earlier point, almost every night there is going to be a mismatch somewhere on the floor that they can either exploit one-on-one with whoever has that advantage, or they can bring that guy into a screening action and go to work from there. But I do think it's going to be a lot of that. And that doesn't necessarily have to run counter to Darko Ball, because the best way to essentially get teams in the blender is you create that initial advantage, and then ping, 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 the ball's moving, guys are cutting, and the defense is playing catch up. And honestly, that is the number one thing that's been missing from Darko's offenses. You know, it's not for a lack of schematic ingenuity on his part. It's like, we don't have this big gargantuan advantage creator who can put the defense in rotation in the first place. Mm-hmm. So we're really just relying on like having to pass and cut our way to the rim. And now I think that will be easier with Kawhi in the fold. And also the fact that we saw Scottie in the playoffs kind of turn himself into that type of guy.
Yeah.
But
I think
do
will be
think
easier with Kawhi on the floor with him too for him, right? Like the driving lanes are
100%.
going to be there in a way they've never been before.
So yes, maybe that they will lack some stylistic versatility or diversity on offense, but I think that's fine. Mm-hmm. And also they're going to keep trying to play in transition a ton. And, you know, like I said, they were 10th in half-court offense last year. You bring in Kawhi, and I think you could nudge that number up even further. I'm not really worried about how effective they're going to be on offense. Maybe it's not going to be like the spiciest, most fun offense to watch, but who cares?
No.
Defensively, I think they can do anything they want, basically. Like they still are they still don't have the apex rim protector where they can funnel all the action toward that guy, play that guy in a one-man zone. That's something they lack that they can't entirely do. But you know, I love this concept, and I think it was Ben Taylor who coined it. At least he was the first person I heard talking about it. But horizontal rim protection, right? Like you're essentially protecting the rim by committee with your ability to switch, with your ability to cover ground, to help and recover, and to essentially just not let teams get to where they want to go, right? Like you are moving the rim protection out from just in front of the basket to essentially all the way out to the three-point line. That's where it starts. And I think the Raptors really have the personnel to execute that in an incredible way. And with the level of, you know, not just skill, not just athleticism, not just ground coverage, but defensive IQ between Scottie and CMB and Kawhi, and honestly even Shed and Jacoby, like great scheme defenders as well as, you know, point of attack defenders. I think you can go switch heavy, you can go blitz heavy, you can go zone heavy, you can do tactically almost anything you want with that group, really apart from having that like final boss at the rim. But even IQ, man, like we've talked about this, right? He's not the best on-ball defender at the point of attack, but you find ways to sort of hide him on the lower half of the defense. You know, try to hide him on like low usage wings instead of forcing him to guard opposing point guards. And you can cook, man. Like he is a great team defender who will get in passing lanes, who knows how to rotate. This was a top 5 defense last year, right? And you just replaced Brandon Ingram with Kawhi Leonard.
And you're going to get like year 2 Collin Murray-Boyles. He was a rookie last year, man. You have to assume, I know it's not always linear, blah, 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 but when you're that good that soon, I'm okay to like expect linear. And so I think you're going to see a more sort of unleashed version of him, Shed, Walter. Like Walter hopefully gets a little stronger, kind of hones in some of the foul stuff. Like, yeah, man, they're going to be a monstrous defensive team. It's going to be awesome. And, you know, obviously, I think we have to note, too, like they might not have that sort of rim protector now. You know, maybe Pirtle can tap into some of his earlier youthful rim protection stats from back in the day. Who's to say? But like this team is not complete.
I'm to say that's not happening.
But, you know, this team is not complete. This is a team that has a window here of probably 3 years with Kawhi, assuming the extension comes in as expected. And like there will be transaction cycles for them to try to find these little things on the margins that can kind of give them a few more looks to throw out there. And this is by no means a finished product. And that's quite exciting to me. They still have stuff left to trade if they deem that they have to come the deadline or whatever. Being an active deadline team again, man. I know they got Ingram at the deadline, but like being a deadline team that's just like is one piece away, there's no better thing in the world. Too bad Marc Gasol's not in the league anymore. What
a perfect fit he'd be on this team, eh?
Yeah. Marc Gasol, turns out he would be a perfect fit on every basketball team to have ever.
No, but especially this one.
Yeah.
Like that's.
Yeah, no doubt. So a couple quick things. How well do you think they're set up to survive the games Kawhi inevitably misses, right? Like, we have to bake in the health thing here.
Yeah.
Pencil them in for 60 to 65 games and cross your fingers. I think they have enough on hand when you combine like their just sort of roster depth with the fact that Darko has them being big old tryhards, which usually plays well in the regular season, to get by. I don't think they're going to go 17-5 without Kawhi or an equivalent winning percentage like they did in 2018-19 probably, but especially because the Eastern Conference is extremely good. And I do think where they finish in the standings may well come down to how they perform in the games Kawhi misses. Do you think they have enough to get by?
I do. I mean, look, the only guys they traded from their roster, from their regular rotation, which you wouldn't even include Grady in that. He was out of the rotation by the end of the season. Did not play a single second of non-garbage time basketball in the postseason. And so it's Ingram and Grady, and basically the when Kawhi's not playing, the team you have left, I know they lost Mamu as well, essentially replaced him with Allen Graves and Kyle Anderson. But so when Kawhi doesn't play, you still have the exact same team that went 7 with the Cavs in the first round of the playoffs. And with a bunch of young guys who are presumably going to be better next season. So look, like the limitations in terms of shot creation and overall offensive punch will still be there when Kawhi's not available. But I think the team's still going to be able to defend at a high level. They'll still be able to scam their way to points playing Darko Ball the way that we saw last year. And again, like this team went 7 with the Cavs with, honestly, IQ didn't even play. So there you go. Like add IQ to that, subtract Ingram, who was a disaster, and then on the sidelines, and Grady, who didn't play at all. That's the team you have when Kawhi's not out there. And Mamu was important in the regular season. He couldn't hang in the playoffs. Graves might not be ready, but that's why you go out and get slow-mo, right? You need a guy to teach Allen Graves how to be Kyle Anderson. Why not go out and get Kyle Anderson to do that job? So that's, look, and to me, they're still a big guy short because Yak is going to miss time. I think we can expect that.
Sure.
It cannot be Trace Jackson Davis who is stepping up to fill that void. Like, they got to find another big. I'm begging for Andre Drummond.
Right.
Like, as far as vet minimum guys go, is there anybody out there who would be better than that? And they could use another shooter as well, I think. But other than that, this team feels pretty close to complete right now.
Well, you mentioned earlier how the team with, RJ and Scottie and Kawhi and CMB is all Braun. I mean, there is one more Braun they could add to that if they wanted to really kind of cover some of these holes too. Doesn't seem like he's on the list. He wasn't on the vision board from Rich Paul, which is very upsetting. Or the Raptors weren't, that is. But yeah, man, this is going to be awesome. I'm very excited.
Sign LeBron to be your backup center? I mean, dude.
Why the hell not?
I'm on board.
Oh man, this season's going to be awesome. By the way, the Eastern Conference is going to be so good and so compelling, and the Celtics are going to be sad, which is great. They're still going to be so annoyingly good probably in the regular season before getting munched in the playoffs. But Joe, I feel like we covered it. This is all very exciting. I can't wait to talk about this team with you all the time from here through the rest of the next 3 years. We've got new life. We're revitalized. We're ready to go. Went a little long here today, but I don't care. I'm
giddy, man. I'm floating right now.
Dude, it's going to be awesome. And really just hope Kawhi stays healthy. McKechnie, baby. The real MVP.
Truly.
Anything you want to
Pablo
plug?
Torre, the real MVP.
Is he going to be at like the jersey retirement for Kyle?
On court with a uniform on.
Get Pablo in there too.
He's getting his jersey retired as well, actually, in that same.
I would hope so. Wow. What is this world we're living in? Wolf, anything you want to plug?
Yeah, man. Raptors in 7. Read, subscribe. I have a piece up where I basically express all of this giddiness that I'm expressing now, but in written form.
Hell yeah.
Just going through like how amazing it is that this dude is back and is still playing at such a high level, basically 7 years later, joining a completely different team, but one that he still fits like a glove. So if you want to read more of my thoughts that are maybe a little bit more organized and literate, go check that out and subscribe. Me and Vivek Jacob, I think, are doing some pretty good work over there. So.
Yeah, this podcast, not what you come to for literacy. This is not a thing. Kawhi Leonard, career high true shooting percentage last season. Crazy.
Best offensive season of his career, no lie.
An absolute monster. Okay, we're going to leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out, following, subscribing, rating, reviewing. Join the Discord, link in the description of the podcast. Plenty of excited people also when they're talking about this team. If you want to join, now's the time. It's free to join. As always, you can tell a friend about the podcast. If we've all had friends text us this week who haven't texted us in 7 years since Kawhi was on the team. If you want to get that person out of the pod, send them the link to the show and they'll perhaps sign up and listen. Hi, new friends. Either way, we'll still be here with you all next week and through the rest of the offseason. Summer League's coming up. We're going to at some point do a little deep dive into the prospects the Raptors drafted. Got a little distracted these past couple of weeks, but we'll get back into that. And keep on talking about this real cool basketball team we get to watch very, very soon. Thank you so much for hanging out. Talk to you soon. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye. Oh.